Warlord behind 1,500 murders returns to Colombia after 12-year sentence in a Salvatore Mancuso was taken into police custody and is expected to cooperate with investigation into war crimes in 1990s and 2000s. A Colombian warlord found responsible for more than 1,500 murders and cases of forced disappearance has been returned to his native country after serving a drug trafficking sentence in the United States and being denied several requests to be sent to Italy, where he also has citizenship. Salvatore Mancuso arrived in Bogotá's El Dorado airport on a charter flight that also carried dozens of Colombians who had been deported from the US after illegally crossing the southern border. Mancuso was quickly taken into police custody, wearing a green helmet and a bulletproof vest. Human rights organizations and government officials in Colombia hope that Mancuso will cooperate with the justice system and provide information about hundreds of crimes that took place when paramilitary groups fought leftist rebels in rural Colombia in the 1990s and early 2000s. This event marks an important step towards reconciliation and the construction of a lasting peace in Colombia, said Fernando Garcia, the director of Colombia's National Immigration Service. Mancuso, 59, was one of the leaders of the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, a paramilitary group founded by cattle ranchers who fought against leftist rebels during one of the most violent stretches of Colombia's decades-long armed conflict. He will remain in prison in Colombia, where he confessed to participation in a string of horrific crimes. He will attempt to get a reduced sentence and possibly a release from prison from a transitional justice system created by Colombia's 2016 peace deal. Victims of the nation's conflict are hoping that Mancuso will help shed light on hundreds of murders and forced disappearances carried out by paramilitary fighters, including extrajudicial executions where victims were buried in mass graves. In multiple hearings with Colombian judges, including some by teleconference while Mancuso was held in US custody, he spoke of his dealings with politicians and of the potential involvement of high-ranking politicians in war crimes. But his extradition to the United States in 2008 slowed investigations. When Mancuso was extradited, truth was extradited, as well as justice and reparations for victims, said Jose Melendez, a human rights lawyer who represents war victims in northern Colombia. We welcome him and want him to tell the truth about the multinational companies, the businessmen and the government ministers who helped with the creation of paramilitary groups. Colombian militia leader confesses to massacres. Read more. Mancuso was born to a wealthy family in the department of Córdoba in northwest Colombia and was a prosperous cattle rancher. He began to collaborate with the Colombian army in the early 90s, after his family was threatened by rebel groups who demanded extortion payments. Mancuso quickly transitioned from providing intel to the military to leading operations against leftist rebels. And by the late 90s, he had become one of the most powerful paramilitary leaders in Colombia. In 2003, he joined a peace process under which paramilitary leaders demobilized in exchange for reduced sentences. But he was extradited to the United States 5 years later during the administration of President Álvaro Uribe, along with 13 other paramilitary leaders who had been wanted for drug trafficking in the United States. Critics said that the surprise extradition had been part of an effort to stop Mancuso and other paramilitary leaders from discussing their ties with Colombia's political establishment. Mancuso was sentenced in 2015 for guiding more than 130 tons of cocaine to the US. He completed his 12-year sentence in 2020 and had been held at an immigration detention center for the past 3 years. Lawyers for Mancuso, the son of an Italian immigrant, had requested he be deported to Italy, where he is a citizen, arguing his life would be in danger in Colombia. U.S. officials decided instead to send Mancuso to Colombia, arguing that his return to the country was vital for the investigation of war crimes. The problem Mancuso has is that, if he talks too much, he could get killed, said Laura Bonilla, a researcher of Colombia's Conflict for the Peace and Reconciliation Foundation.